Okay, so Ben, do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about Share Lives Plus?
Sure. So thank you very much for letting us speak today. I work and James works for the charity Shared Lives Plus. We are a UK-wide body and we're a network for people who are Shared Lives carers and the schemes that those carers work with. So I'm the lead for the work in Scotland. And as I say, we've got James and Andy with us who are going to talk about their experiences in Shared Lives. And they were matched together in a Shared Lives arrangement 12 years ago. I don't want to say too much before we hear from them, but just so people know what we're talking about, I'm going to explain what Shared Lives is and some of the processes in it. Then we're going to hear about James and Andy's experience. And then I'm going to come back and talk about the sort of provision in Scotland, and then we can have a discussion and open it up with the three of us. So what is Shared Lives? Shared Lives is an alternative to residential and other traditional forms of social care. It's a model that is based upon the quality of people's relationships, and I don't think it's unrealistic to say that the outcomes can be really astounding. In Shared Lives, an adult who needs support either moves in with or visits a Shared Lives carer on a regular basis. And they share, and together they share family and share community life. The care is always has some element of it that is based in the home of the Shared Lives carer. And it is not something that is trying to replace existing families. It is something that is there to walk alongside people and their families so that family life can truly be enjoyed and not dominated by the role of being a carer. The people involved are matched by a Shared Lives scheme, and the scheme is registered with the Care Inspectorate. And this matching process is a real key part or a key element of the model. Both parties have to agree positively to work together, and so either party can say that they're not happy to work with the other person. And because of that, you get a very stable, because of that positive choice, you get a very stable relationship, and arrangements tend to be very stable, often going on for decades. The Shared Lives care is self-employed. They are assessed and they are trained by the Shared Lives schemes, and they're approved by an independent panel to that scheme. And it's a very similar process to the recruitment and the approval of a foster carer. So it usually takes 2 or 3 months to go through that process. They work under agreement with the Shared Lives scheme, and so they're paid through the scheme. It's not a variation on having a PA. There's no transfer of money between the two parties. And the role naturally and almost deliberately blurs the boundaries between what is professional approach and what is the personal approach. And people really flourish when they're supported in that kind of family environment. It's a very flexible model. You can find examples of people being supported from almost every corner of the social care system. But the traditional model is working with adults who live with a learning disability in a live-in arrangement. In recent years, it's diversified a great deal, and it supports, amongst others, older people, including people with dementia, people living with mental ill health, young people leaving foster care, survivors of domestic abuse, and people coming home from hospital. And it's also very flexible in the type of support, so it doesn't have to be a live-in arrangement. Short breaks or day supports are also and routinely provided. Often there is a mixture of the type of support that's been provided. So it brings together the personal, family-based supports with the professional social supports that are on offer, and it blends them to get what we hope is the best of both worlds. In total, there are about 13,000 people supported in the UK, maybe 500 in Scotland, and maybe 1,000 of those 13,000 are people who live with mental ill health. I suppose it's some of the processes that I've described that makes it a different type of service, and it doesn't easily fit into the models of established care, but it's one that helps people navigate the long and often very complex public service journey that they face. And it provides people with a place where they belong, where they feel loved and they feel valued. And I think one of the things that I've always liked about it is it's based upon asking the question, what is it you need to lead a good life? Which is the sort of peak of personalization. So I'm going to hand over to James and Andy, who are going to talk about their journey into and their experience of living in shared lives.
Thanks very much, Ben.
So are you going to spotlight Andy, or have you done yet?
Yep, that's them. Okay.
James, go.
Good afternoon. My name is James. I now live in shared lives with Andy and his family in Ware, Hertfordshire. I moved from my National Society for Epilepsy in Chalfont, Buckinghamshire, where I had been living for 21 years in December 2010. I wanted to try and live in a house, my own house, and be nearer my family. And now I am very happy. I can get help when I need it and do lots of things for myself. I have my own garden and a greenhouse to grow plants and vegetables. I have joined a local karate club and I am working towards my green belt. I like making cakes. Going out to do my own shopping, going to my favourite cafe, Truly Scrumptious, and have just joined a knit and natter group in the local pub. I am a Shared Lives Plus ambassador, and I like telling my story about my life at conferences and workshops. Me and Andy give a talk about my epilepsy to carers each month to help them with their work. In 2016, me and Andy formed local social community interest company to help people get out more and make friends. We started running a cafe with the local country market. I like serving tea and coffee and helping people. We now run 5 weekly coffee mornings in Ware, in a housing all library, pub, building society and arts centre, all in the town of Ware. People like my lemon drizzle cake. We are off to London next month, helping to run a workshop with community catalysts at the Learning Disability England conference. I like being busy, helping people, and have made lots of friends doing things for myself. Makes me happy. Thank you. And now I will pass you on to Andy.
Really well done, James. Lovely, good stuff. Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and thanks Ben for getting us along. I hope that gave you a little bit of flavour of what we do. But a bit of context, as I said, I was in teaching for many years, and left teaching in 2009, and somebody asked me, in fact, somebody we knew very well, was a shared lives carer, and they said, "Hey, come on, Andy, we've got this guy coming in. You'd be great for him." And I said, "Whoa, I don't know anything about social care whatsoever." And they said, "Oh no, you're fine." So they mentored me to start with, and here we are in 2023, living a good life, both of us. And I think it's all about, it's not just about James, it's about the interaction between us and our family. We do buck the system a little bit in shared lives, in fact that as James wanted to live in his own house, which is not isn't the traditional shared lives model. But with the social work team, with epilepsy specialist team, which are fantastic, we're still going after nearly 12 years. I have a bed in James's house. He has a bed in our house. He comes to our house quite a lot, not so much now as he used to 10 years ago, but that's always there. We chose a dog together. She's just here somewhere. I think just there she is. That sort of stuff. The things I like to put across really is that I think James is now not everything worked well. That sounds all rosy, doesn't it? But there were some real, for example, when James first came, people said, "Oh, yeah," they said, "put him in daycare for a couple of days a week." Well, for goodness sake, he'd been in bloody daycare for 20 odd years. So I really didn't think that was a great idea, and it didn't work. It really didn't work. Why would it? You know, looking back, it was very obvious it wouldn't work. And then there was the stereotypical jobs of working in a charity shop. Just don't get me started on that. I'll be here for a long time. And things that, and one of the jobs was in a volunteer place in a day care centre. Again, you know, looking back, how stupid that was. It didn't work. And the organisation that was supposed to be actually paid to do this stuff were not good. So James and I came out of a target setting session, which I understand shared lives carers need to do. Goodness sake, I did them as a teacher with the old education plans, and they were probably pretty poor, pretty bad as well. And I said, "Did you understand that session?" James, no. To be quite honest, I didn't have much understanding either. So I said, "What do you want to do? What do you want to do?" And he said, "I'd like more friends and a paid job." So I said, "Right, okay, let's do that." So that's what we've been doing for the last 9-10 years. James didn't know how to live in a community because he hadn't lived in one, except with people surrounded by people with epilepsy and disability. Why would he? So I set about connecting him up to the community. It's great fun. Local pub, trees, scrumptious, the town, which seemed to me very obvious. I often have this argument with Nick Sinclair at Local Area Coordination, who I admire hugely, and I say this is not rocket science. He says it is rocket science. I just disagree, but there you go. Connected him up, and then we thought, well, you know, you don't have to have a learning disability and a long-term health condition to want to have friends, do you? So that's how Local Social was born. We recruited another lady who was in a very similar situation to James, and they are both directors of Local Social along with me, and we set about bringing people together. How are we going to do that? What does James like doing most of all? Serving tea and coffee. What do people like doing most of all? Eating lemon drizzle, tea and coffee, bit of a chat. Fantastic. So James, actually, we got James a job in the country market down in the town. There he was. And locally, then Local Social, which started in a place that was not appropriate and nobody came, literally. We moved to where James was actually doing the tea and coffee. And it's gone from there. So James is doing the things he likes doing, things he's very good at. He's good with people. He's got a lovely smile. And he likes being surrounded by people. And he likes making cakes, and he likes doing all that stuff. So he's a great ambassador for Local Social, along with the other lady who's a director too. So that's where we are, really. It's a journey is a bit of a cliche, I know, but for me it's fantastic because now I've been introduced to the world of community building. I've Cormac Russell disciple, and we are got all half fingers and all sorts of things about converting garages into community places, working with charities. We did a great lot of work with Shared Lives Plus, which was fantastic when pre-COVID, at conferences and workshops, and James standing up front of in Manchester. It's about 350 people. It's great. So I have got a huge thank you to make to James, because if we'd not crossed paths, then probably I would still be, I don't know if I might still be teaching, but who knows. There you go. So it's the power of connection is so important, and James has taught me that more than anything. And in the little town we're working at, we're reasonably successful. I say James's epilepsy, when James first arrived, in 2000, I drove him away, literally drove him away from Chalfont on December 15th, 2010. One of the most frightening days of my life. Because the Shared Lives manager said, "Oh, Andy, if you get in trouble, just call an ambulance." Okay, fine. Now we're giving a bit back in terms of epilepsy knowledge and understanding, etc., which is great. You'd be happy to know that we are covered with bed monitors, with alert watches, which provides that cover that you need. I'm really good at calling ambulances, that sort of stuff. It's not all hunky dory. James has been in hospital for periods of time, hasn't he?
Yeah.
But over the past few years, much less. Seizure pattern is hugely, significantly decreased. I can get up in the morning, whereas used to not to be up 10 years ago, even couldn't get up. What did you have to get up for? That one of his favourite phrases that I don't allow him to say anymore. If you asked James 12 years ago or 10 years ago, what have you been doing today? He'd say, what would you say?
Not a lot.
Yeah, he's definitely not doing not a lot now. He's busier now than he's ever been, which is great, and I'm having a wonderful time too. So that's basically us, really. We'd love to answer some really tricky questions, and just anything you like, go ahead.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to come back to Ben and see if he's got anything to just highlight.
I've got a couple of things, and I think it's really important just to be clear for this group, the benefit of this group, that when you talk about 21 years living with epilepsy, UK was that's a residential hospital, isn't it? And so
Yes.
and that's the connection that I wanted to draw, that for 21 years that was seen as the most appropriate place for James. And James, you think your life has thrived since leaving there rather than as a consequence of being there.
Yeah.
I'm just going to talk a little bit, if I can, about some of the provision in Scotland. So Shared Life started 35 years ago with the closure of the big learning disability hospitals, and people who were supporting people within those hospitals put their hands up and said that they would support somebody at their own in their own home who was not able to live independently. And the regulations that grew up around that and from that are now called the adult placement regulations. And again, I wanted to draw that line about the history of it, that the history of the model is about people coming out of hospital over long-term institutional care. The next thing to say is that it's not for everybody. We're not saying that this is a panacea either for people who are in hospital now or for the whole of social care. But there isn't, I suppose there isn't a single model which is. But we do have lots of examples of people who are profoundly ill, leading better, productive lives because of the change of environment that they find themselves in. So in South East Wales, for example, there is a mental health crisis intervention service that is lowering the numbers of people who end up being sectioned on a psychiatric ward by arranging short-term rapid matches rather than going to hospital. And in Glasgow, there is a long-standing service that has been supporting people in the same family for decades. And that kind of love and stability that is so absent from so much of the social care system is not unusual within Shared Lives. In Scotland, last year, there were 572 people supported within Shared Lives. There are 15 Shared Lives schemes, most of which are run by local authorities. Some of them are run by third sector bodies like Quarriers or Cornerstone. But there isn't a Shared Lives provision or a Shared Lives option in every local authority area. And we'd like there to be. Just to cover some of the figures, about half of the people supported live with a learning disability or autism. A quarter are older people or people who may have dementia. And a quarter are people who are young people leaving the care system. Although there isn't provision in every area of Scotland, because it's not a building-based system, so you just need an office space to run the scheme. There tends to be some flexibility about where services take place. So, for instance, Cornerstone have a couple of offices in Irvine and in Gala Shields, but operate and support matches across most of the south of Scotland. Something to mention, and this is absolutely not the most important thing, but it is relevant when you're talking to commissioners and authorities. Shared Life saves local authorities money. It's far cheaper to establish a Shared Life service and pay the families than it is to run a residential or supported accommodation service. And so typically it saves them about £25,000 per person per year, which mounts up really quickly. And allows more people to receive services than they would be able to from the same budget. So I suppose the question for this group is what can our members do to help? So every Shared Life service in Scotland is a member of Shared Lives Plus. And I went to them and I said, following the documentary on the BBC, I went to them and I said, is there something that we can do? Is there something that we can offer to see if some people in some circumstances can move on? And not all schemes are in a position to offer to help. Maybe they don't have the expertise or they don't have the capacity. But I did meet with managers of 4 schemes who said that they would be prepared to work with families and with hospitals to see if there was a way that they can contribute. And they recognise that they would have to modify their processes. And they talked about that and talked about how they'd done that before. And as part of a sort of personalisation anyway, you would always create the matching process that allowed both parties to be content with working together. But they would be able to modify a matching process to build enough confidence in everybody so that some people could leave hospital. So thank you very much. That's what I wanted to say before opening it up to see if there are any questions for James and Andy or anything that I can help people with.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for to all of you, to James and Andy and to Ben for that. We're now going to stop recording and we'll open up for questions.